The most important thing for a person who has been through any kind of trauma is to feel safe. And safety is an emotional issue. Are you kind? Do you care about me? Are you going to all make fun of me? Is someone going to laugh at me? Is someone going to leave me out of things? Is someone going to hurt me? Or am I okay? And that is the fundamental question. And many of the behaviors we see, quote unquote, the good offense is the best defense. I think you're going to hurt me, so I will hurt you before you hurt me. 99.9% of the aggression I've seen has been out of fear. Not wanting to hurt someone, but freaking out. You're going to hurt me. This bad thing is going to happen. I'm going to throw this table, or I'm going to hit, or I'm going to do whatever to protect myself. Not because I wanted to hurt you. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about drilling down to the core of what we're looking at and how can we really support folks. And believe me, I know you already know this because you do this day in and day out. What I'm going to do is just give you a different framework, right? A different paradigm, a paradigm shift. So as we look at it from a trauma-informed lens, it's going to look a little different. It's things you already know, but I'm giving you a different perspective. There is so much trauma in the world of intellectual disabilities. It's so sad and so heartbreaking. So the Spectrum Institute published a report in 2013, interviewed 760 something people with disabilities, and 70% said they had been abused. Only 37% reported it. 90% said that the abuse was ongoing. I was able to meet Joe Shapiro and be interviewed for part of his series where he was looking to talk with therapists, because I do a lot of therapy with folks with intellectual disabilities. It's predominant, even though I have that nice title, this is really the most of what I do. I do therapy and give these talks. But hey, I love my title, but I'm not really directing anything. But the sad thing is, through the years, I've worked inside of provider agencies, and then, now working in a clinic, I just hear story after story of abuse. And Joe Shapiro told us that he went to the Bureau of Statistics and he said, will you please print a report on how many of all the sexual abuse cases reported, how many were people with disabilities, intellectual disabilities, and that's what he focused on. And they said to him, people with disabilities are 7% more likely to be sexually abused than people without. 7 times more likely. Here's somebody calling me right now who calls me all the time, who has a terrible history of abuse. Don't give out your cell phone. Rule number 1. Oh well, many people have it. They're going to keep calling me. But the reality is people with disabilities are 7 times more likely to be sexually abused than people without. And what does that mean? Actually, that's only the people that were reported through police. That does not include incidents reported from agencies throughout the country. So, wow, right? And I bet I'm telling many of you something you already know. In 2017, the Bureau of Justice said people with disabilities are 2.5 times more likely to be the victims of violent crime. And it's 40% more likely that they'll know the perpetrators, right? We've all heard stories. Then there's social trauma. There's the bullying. Who with a disability hasn't been called the R word, hasn't been picked on, hasn't been bullied, right? Then there's being left out. There's studies that show that actually being excluded causes physical pain. It's that impactful. Then there's the trauma of institutionalization, being in a residential setting. Many adolescents in residential settings There has been abuse. Many of them go from setting to setting. It's tough. So we want to look at the big trauma. We understand, right, when there's been sexual abuse or there's been early death of parents or, you know, so many things. But then the little t traumas are just as impactful. Francine Shapiro says, you know, the smaller traumas in life can add up and create post-traumatic stress disorder. She's a specialist in trauma. So think about the folks you work with. How many of them have been bullied? All of them, right? At some point or another. Do you know anyone or do you work with anyone that somebody says the slightest thing and they get really upset and maybe even push someone or do something because they're being bullied? And bullying is trauma. Discrimination is trauma. We have been through so much recently. We've witnessed some horrible things. And I'm going to tell you, if you have been the victim of racism in any way, shape, or form, these have been some very triggering times, right? These are times when a lot of people don't feel safe. The victims of discrimination in any shape are not feeling safe. And that includes people with disabilities. That I was in El Paso right after the shooting at the Walmart. They asked me to come back because I had talked about trauma. And I did such a bad job. I was trying to come up with ways to comfort people and I had so little. I just kept saying I was sorry. And they said, well, that's the one thing that makes us feel better. And we talked about trauma, but they said, you know, the folks that in one day program, they were across the street from the Walmart where the shooter was. Remember that horrible shooting? And that was their whole life. They would go to the Walmart every week. They would save their pennies from, you know, their work that they did in the program and go to Walmart. And after that, no one wanted to even leave the building. They were hunkered down. All they cared about was being safe. That was so traumatizing, even though they weren't connected, they didn't see, but it was trauma of a community, right? And that was a reality. So we may not even see when we're looking at post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. And I believe it's a spectrum. You can have a lot of it or you can have a little bit of it. But we're going to go next on Thursday. I'm going to talk about the symptoms of PTSD, and you're going to really see that as we break it down. It'll become very clear how we're looking at it in ways we don't even realize, right? And it comes up again and again. Another type of trauma that I've encountered quite a lot is it's called betrayal trauma. And recent research has shown that just the effects of being betrayed, right, are very traumatizing. So thinking you had a friend and then the friend does something horrible to you. Who hasn't experienced something like that? Now imagine a person with a disability. This is Tamika, and she wanted me to tell her story. Tamika, all Tamika ever wanted was a boyfriend. And she had a boy at the day program that she liked, a young man. They were both very new to the program, both transitioning, maybe 22, 21, 22. And his mother would not let him date. They were in love, but the mother would not let them date. And then, you know, she went on and she just kept saying she wanted a boyfriend. She wanted a boyfriend. She switched day programs, not because of that, but she wanted a boyfriend. And we did not help her with that. She got her alone time. I do run a singles group, by the way, but I wasn't listening to her and we weren't there for her in the ways that we could have been. Because here's what happened. She got alone time and she had a couple of hours every day. She was very proud about that. And she started taking walks in the neighborhood. And this man saw her and realized she was alone. And I think realized, you know, maybe that she had a disability and started giving her rides. You want to go to the store, you want to go here, you want to go there. And then he brutally raped her. She wanted me to tell people. She says, tell people, because what happened was they brought me in to do the crisis counseling, which is, you know, I'm sorry to say, I'm so often doing the crisis counseling, not the counseling before where you really want to be doing that, right? And fortifying people against this and helping them to see the signs of when they're being groomed and when they're not safe. But she was so desperate for a boyfriend. So after the rape, when she came home and very disheveled and hurt, she said to her staff, well, this happened, but that's what you have to do if you want a boyfriend. And he said, he's my boyfriend. And when we explained to her that was rape and that's not your boyfriend and no one should ever do to you what he did, that was the biggest impact of everything. And I can tell you 10 other stories about that same betrayal, that sense of, oh, now I finally have a boyfriend. Yeah, he wants me to do these weird things, but I'll do them because it's what it takes to have a boyfriend. So the more we can teach those social skills to people, the more we support relationships, the more we help people in their relationships, the more we protect them against this type of trauma, sexual abuse, and betrayal. And then when she really processed it all, we did EMDR, which is a type of therapy, eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. It really helped her a lot. Then we did some art therapy to build up her sense of self. We did collages about who she is and, you know, strong Black woman, you know, and I'm beautiful, and really did all these things. And she would take these collages home about who I am. And we did all this work. And she said, okay, I'm done now. It was great. And then she said, tell everybody what happened to me. Tell them so it doesn't happen to them. So I have her picture. I bet you all know stories like this. I know you do. You know, the trauma can start early on. How many of you work with somebody who's really super needy? I need you, I need you, I need you. Like the guy that just called me. I won't show you his name. I need to talk right now. Yes, we just had our session yesterday and I talked to you last night, which I shouldn't have done. It was a weak moment. I answered the phone. But now you need to talk to me today, right? You know what I'm talking about. So oftentimes that begins, attachment theorists believe, at birth. So, you know, very early on, if a baby comes home and, you know, baby's hungry and cries, hopefully what happens for all of us is that somebody comes and feeds that baby. But what if mom is, you know, hitting the jack and watching The Young and the Restless and, oh, Victor, you've done it again. Oh, he's so old now, right? Victor, Nikki wants you. But she's having a great time and baby starts screaming hysterically. And finally mom says, oh yeah, I got to feed the baby. And if that happens over and over again, that baby learns you can't just ask for what you need. You need to be hysterical. You need to be in people's faces. Or let's say grandma is watching the baby and somebody should be watching grandma, right? And grandma's snoozing and seeing Jesus, here I come. Oh, I'm so happy. And then, wah, baby breaks into the dream. What's the baby doing in the heaven? And the baby learns that every day you got to scream loud enough to wake up grandma if you want to get fed. So many different scenarios where that outline or that blueprint for being very needy is formed very early on. That's a type of attachment disorder. I'm sure many of you work with people where they have a diagnosis of reactive attachment disorder. How about avoidant attachment, where baby cries, baby screams, but mom's been doing that meth and she's not responding to anybody or anything, right? Or opioids or whatever, but she's out and baby gives up. I have a friend who told me she went to an orphanage in Russia and none of the babies were crying because they knew it didn't matter. They were fed at a certain time. They weren't comforted. There were terrible conditions. There was a study done. So those babies learn, by the way, those babies learn that it doesn't matter what you do and they don't connect with people. And we've worked with people who have been neglected. We don't always know it. How many of you know somebody that was adopted by a wonderful family, but this kid has terrible problems and all kinds of issues? Because early on, research now shows us very early on this damage is done. So there was a very interesting study done, the Bucharest Early Intervention Orphan Study, which I love to talk about. It was done out of Romania, and a guy named Nathan Fox took children in a very neglected, very poor orphanage in Romania. And he left half of them, just randomly sampled them, left half of them in the orphanage where they weren't getting any nurturing, where it's just bare bones because they have so few staff. And then he put the other half in a foster care system designed for nurturing, where at least one parent had to stay home and they had to be interacting and they got lots of training to be very nurturing. And the results were really startling. So they took kids where the attachment theorists would say, oh, these kids, the damage is done, right? The kids were from 6 months old to 5 years old. So you would say the damage is already done. But instead, many kids made great progress when they were nurtured. There's a wonderful book by Bruce Perry. I think he's down around your parts of the country. The boy who was raised as a dog, that just lays it out so beautifully, in terms of the effects of neglect and the healing effects of being nurtured. And nurturing can go on at any age. And the more people are nurtured, the quicker they heal. The more they're getting comfort, the more they get emotional support, the more they feel secure in relationships, the faster they can heal. And this is the truth. So they looked at Axis 1 disorders. The kids left in the institution had 55% of them had either a thought or a mood or both disorder, very severe psychosis, right, already. The kids in foster care, that was down by 20%. And then they compared them to kids who grew up in their biological home. Emotional disorders, 49% to 29%, right? Behavioral disorders were only 32% to 25%. That was less because a lot of people just shut down, right? A lot of people give up. And then, to me, a very important finding was about IQ, right? Look at this. The average IQ of the kids left in the orphanage was 73 versus the IQ of the kids who were nurtured and loved and taken care of, 85. So that lack of nurturing really affects IQ. Your executive functioning doesn't really kick in if you haven't had the proper stimulation and interaction. Neglect is very damaging, and not receiving the proper nourishing and nurturing are damaging. And we're thinking about a lot of the folks that we support, right? And maybe, sometimes people are born, they have trauma and they're born to parents who had trauma. And maybe they're raised by a single mom who's overwhelmed and succumbs to a drug or alcohol problem. These things happen. We don't know what goes on behind closed doors, but when we get these folks, as teenagers and in their young 20s, and they come in with issues, there's always a reason. There's always a backstory. So the children who stayed in the institution, their brains actually shrunk. The gray matter of their brain was smaller than the normal size. And being neglected lowered that, and lower brain activity as well, measured by an EEG, impairments in executive functioning. So they then tested as though they had an intellectual disability, which by that time they did. Didn't have to, though. How many of you know someone who's really, really smart, and yet their IQ was below 72 and they're diagnosed with an intellectual disability, but they're really smart, right? Are you all thinking of someone? Now I ask you, do they have a trauma history? I bet the answer is yes. So people need interaction for their brains to get wired up correctly. That interaction is critical. And now we have a whole nother type of person. The face of disabilities has changed through the years. So less and less people with genetic disorders are actually being born. So I was speaking somewhere in North Carolina last year, and this man told me they got an amniocentesis that said that he was his wife had the baby, not him, but they were told they were going to have a baby with Down syndrome and that they should have an abortion and that they would go ahead and schedule the abortion for them. And the couple said, no, we want to keep the baby. They called them 6 times trying to still set up the abortion. I've had families in Maryland tell me the same thing, that they were given the diagnosis and then they were told, and we went ahead and helped you out by setting up an abortion. Oh my God, these are the greatest people on the planet, people with Down syndrome. They're so fun. And some of my closest friends, I could not believe this when I heard this. And he said they had to say to them, we're going to get a lawyer if you don't stop calling us. And then they stopped. So and now amniocentesis screens for many more genetic disorders than it used to. So less and less people are being born with genetic disorders, and we're getting less and less folks into our programs. And we're getting more people who have drug and alcohol exposure in utero, right? How many of you know somebody who is so aware socially? They know who's sleeping with who, which staff are cheating on their spouses. They can tell you the latest gossip all the time. They know everything about pop culture. They can tell you all about Cardi B when she was arrested and what for, how long Lil Wayne was in jail for. They can tell you everything about everything, but they can't finish a sentence. And they would rather have a behavior, quote unquote, than have you know they can't do something, because they're very aware of where they fit in the world, and they want everyone to see them as someone without a disability because of that great social awareness. But they have severe ADD, can't focus at all, and have severe impulse control. Go from 0 to 100 in a half a second. Boom, 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 boom. Are you thinking of somebody probably under 36 or 37? Are you? And now I want to ask you, would you think about that person who knows everything, but they have, just boom, they can explode like a firecracker, run into traffic, get into a fight, but then they're fine again, and they were fine before, and then all of a sudden it's another thing. And they know everything about everybody, but it's really hard for them to learn new things. They usually write, maybe a 1st or 2nd grade level, read. Is there any likelihood that that person was exposed to drugs in utero? Because this is the pattern we see from cocaine exposure from years ago, when there was that terrible epidemic of crack cocaine in so many cities, and so many people fell victim to it. And we also see it from methamphetamines, same type of pattern. Interestingly enough, many people through the years, we've seen heroin and people born addicted to heroin where we haven't seen the same effects. But now we're looking at the effects of other opioids, which I think are more damaging, like OxyContin and Percocet and whatever else. So the face of disabilities has changed, and people don't respond to behavior plans like they used to. These guys, I learned, they'll come right up to be about to earn whatever it is that they're working on, and then blow it almost on purpose right before they earn it. And there's almost always a lot of trauma because of that trauma of those early years. I can tell you about 5 different people I work with where their mothers had a terrible drug addiction and were really struggling. And they were in the home until they were 5 or 6, and the school finally spotted it. And before that, their mothers prostituted them out for money. And they've told me these horrible stories that nobody makes up. So we don't know what we don't know. But we have a whole nother type of person that's come to us, and we need to realize that and be supportive, because when we're just looking at their behaviors as trying to get something out of us or be manipulative, we sometimes set up a power struggle. And those power struggles make things worse. No one wins a power struggle. And if anyone wins, it's not us. Am I right? And also, it just continues on endlessly. Go here, do that. No, I won't. Bah, bah, bah. But when we support, when we get, you've been through hell and back, what can I do to just listen to you? Listening is a big piece. What can I do to help you? What do you need right now? That makes all the difference. Because, part of their brain, that yellow part of their brain, that's where the fight, flight, or freeze piece is. That's where their amygdala that picks up all the danger signals is. And if the amygdala thinks it's, so let's say, we're in the jungle and we're antelopes and we're having a good time. I always use this example. And a lion comes and we've never seen a lion before. And we're like, ooh, look at that furry thing. And then the lion attacks us and eats our friend George. And the rest of us run away. Our amygdala takes a picture of the lion, right? And then a couple of weeks later, we're talking about George, what a great guy he was, having a good time eating grass, but being sad about the loss of George. And there comes another lion. We're not going to sit there and say, wow, is that the same one or is that a different one? Because our amygdala took a picture of the lion and says, oh no, that's danger. And we run. If we're gorillas, we fight. Let's get him, boys. Let's say that lion ate one of our babies. Let's go kill him. Or let's say we're a little tiny anteater. We'll just freeze. I'm a dead anteater because we're the only animal that eats dead animals. We figured it out. We got the Food Network. We know what we're doing. But not lions. So back in the day when we were all in the jungle and when we were all surviving, that amygdala was our survival because it would trigger a fight, flight, or freeze response. And that was what kept us safe. And we as humans have that. That's wired inside of us, right? If you're a little baby and you touch the stove, next time you come to the kitchen, you stay away from the stove because that's hot and that hurt me. And when your amygdala is triggered and you think you're in danger, your smart brain goes offline because you don't need to sit around analyzing if that's the same lion or not. You need to just run or fight or do freeze, whatever, right? So let's say we're driving down the highway and a Walmart truck comes and cuts us off and we're about to crash into the wall, right? That's not at that very point. When you're in your car trying to save yourself, you're not thinking, what is that 1-800 number? I need to report him. No. You're thinking, right? Your smart brain goes offline and you just respond and everything gets really bright and clear. And sometimes it kind of slows down, right? And you do what you have to do. And then after that, you're still not calling Walmart because you're all shaken up, right? That's the yellow part of your brain, your limbic system. So your amygdala flashes and fills you up with chemicals, adrenaline and cortisol, and you get focused. And then the only way you can calm down is in that parasympathetic nervous system. So you breathe. If you're like me, you might pick up the phone and call your husband and go, I almost died. How would you feel if I were dead? Because I will milk that moment for every ounce it's worth. Or whatever, but we're still shaken. Right? Now, it's 3 weeks later. You're riding down that road. You see a Walmart truck. And all of a sudden, you cut over 3 lanes and because your amygdala has told you you're in danger because it saw the truck. You were not in danger, but you inadvertently placed yourself in danger by cutting people off. In the state of Texas, where you have open carry, who knows what can happen? Stuff happens. So, oh my goodness, think about now, folks you support. How many of them have put themselves in more danger? How many of you know someone that's run into the road or jumped out of a car or picked a fight with the meanest, most dangerous person in the program? Because their amygdala was flashing. It wasn't rational. It didn't get them anywhere, but they were being told by their brain, danger, 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 and not thinking rationally. And it's not the teachable moment, right? When I wrote some really bad behavior plans that told people, now's the time, when they have that behavior, tell them, don't do that. You'll lose your soda or you'll lose your points. Please. And when the staff said that, they would throw the chair right at their face. And I set those poor staff up because people weren't thinking rationally. They're just freaking out, right? So we say when we do a functional assessment and we say something is behavioral, we assume that that behavior is very deliberate with intent. But what we are missing it's often trauma-based. And that person doesn't have intent. They're just freaking out and thinking they're going to get hurt, or they have to protect themselves. And they're like, and then they do something that later on they regret. That fight, flight, or freeze response. Sometimes we see attachment issues come up, like they start saying, oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it, I'm so sorry. Or I need you, I need you. Those are trauma responses. That amygdala actually becomes enlarged when people have had a lot of trauma. And it's so amazing. There was a study done with children who grew up in Bosnia, and they had enlarged amygdalas. And when a part of the brain becomes enlarged, another part has to shrink. And their hippocampus, which is their working memory, which enables them to learn, is what shrinks. So it's harder to learn. Again, trauma making it more difficult to function cognitively. And when I saw Temple Grandin, she said, I'm going to show you a picture of my brain. My amygdala is enlarged and my hippocampus is shrunk. That's what a brain of a person with autism looks like. I was shocked, like, oh my God, that's a person with autism. That's a person with trauma. Because having autism is traumatizing. It's very hard not to be understood. It's very hard to have lights constantly flashing, not to be able to handle overhead lights, not to be able to handle noise, constant noise. People saying things that you don't really understand, feeling like you're being picked on and not knowing why. Autism can be very traumatizing when you don't feel safe. There's that pyramid, the behavior's on the top, but the emotion is underneath, and then trauma at the root, oftentimes. So the behavior is just the tip of the iceberg. It's not the thing that the person is focused on, it's what's coming out based on all their emotion. And the emotion is based on the trauma they've been through, and that amygdala saying, oh no, you can't trust these people. I like to distinguish between trauma responses and behavioral responses. So I'll tell you a little story. So I worked at this agency, and we had this woman who came to us as a young woman, and she had a really tough history. She grew up in a rural area, and she had the disability in the family, and her brother was sexually abusing her in the barn. And then one day he started bringing his friends. So this poor woman told her family, and no one listened to her, no one believed her. And so one day she burned the barn down. She got some matches and burned it down. I don't blame her. So then, of course, she was labeled the fire setter, and they put her in the institution with this forensic, right? Forensic, she's forensic, she's a fire setter, got all these labels. No one believed her about the brother. Family cut her off. They tried to, Child Protective Services, took some action, and the family got mad at her. So her family cut her off. She's in this institution. We come and get her when she ages, she hits 21. We come and get her. We bring her into our residential and day services. And she has a staff who is constantly making fun of her and talking down to her, right? So this staff, her name is Piccola, she would say, oh, you better not set a fire. We know what you do. We got to check you for matches. And the behavior plan had the check for matches thing because you had to do it. And she was getting angrier and angrier and more upset. Got her therapy, and I was supervising her therapist. I was a psychologist in the program at the time. And she keeps, and by the way, the other two people in the house, so there were 3 people with disabilities and the staff, the house manager, Piccola, Piccola would gang up with them and they would all laugh at her. Oh, look what she's doing now. Oh, look at her. So when we started doing the therapy, she told her therapist, I hate them. And I hate that staff. She's really mean to me. And she told her how she's laughing at her and the other 2 laugh at her. And she was very upset. And she said, I want to move. I want to change houses. And I went to the boss and I said, we've got to change. We'll call her Linda. We have to change Linda. We have to move her. We have to move her. And he said, well, if I move everybody that wants to move, then all I would be doing is moving people. And do you know how much it costs to move people? And blah, 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 blah. Okay. He wouldn't move her. He said, it's your behavior plan. You have to have a better behavior plan. Change the plan. It didn't matter what incentive was there for Linda. She felt horrible. She had been cut off by her family, moved, and here she was being made fun of. So Pacola just said one more thing one day, and Linda flipped out. She broke tables. She broke a table. She flipped over the glass table. She knocked over lamps. She's throwing things, going crazy, and she broke the flat screen TV, the brand new flat screen TV. We just started getting flat screen TVs back then. And you know what they did after that? I bet you can guess. They moved her, of course. And then she came to the day program. I'll never forget it because Linda was a very kind person with lots of compassion. And she came to the day program and she gathered people around her and she said, do you guys want to move? And she's saying it quietly, trying to make sure the staff didn't hear. And they're all like, yeah, everybody wanted to move, right? Break your TV. So then after that, 4 TVs got broken. True story. Within 6 months. And everybody got moved. And I told our executive director, you know, we could have saved some money if we just listened to people. We'd save some money on TVs. So the reality is that, you know, she needed support. She needed to feel respected. She needed to feel cared about. And when she moved into a home where she got along with other folks and she did have a good relationship with staff and she did have better relationships. And now she has a boyfriend and, you know, that's a really important relationship to her. And she was working before COVID a couple hours a week. She's not now, but, you know, she's doing so much better because we finally got it. Like, oh, she needs to feel safe. She needs to feel supported. She needs to feel respected. And the therapy continued. And that was such a critical piece for her. And she has not set any fires. So, you know, when the folks with autism, as I said earlier, we have to understand that people are smart. I know, who am I telling? You know better than I do. You know, always assume intelligence. So they overhear things. And something they hear might make them feel like you don't like, not you, but somebody doesn't like them or someone's out to get them or whatever. Exquisitely sensitive and intelligent. So having autism can be very traumatizing and very difficult. I can't wait for you to hear Amy. Love into her talk. And she made a wonderful video, her and her son, and they can teach us all so much. You're going to love that. And she taught me a lot about, you know, really what people need and how easy it is when you don't feel safe to really deteriorate, to decompensate. And when you do feel safe, you can heal and you can recover, particularly folks with autism. It's critical. What do people need to recover from trauma? They need, as I've been saying all afternoon, they need to feel safe, but it's perceived safety. We have to let them know that we're safe. How do we do that? We tell them we like them. We care about you. We make it very clear. I'm here for you. I'm not in this constant power struggle all the time. I'm supporting you. And we're going to figure out how to make your life better, right? We support connections. Those are so important. Relationships are everything. And we support empowerment, helping people to have real choices, not just have nice choices in a beautiful plan that sits in the book and the state really loves when they come to inspect us, but have nothing to do with reality, but real ways that they're making choices and moving their own lives forward. So what does an emotionally safe staff do? They convey positive regard. I respect you and I care about you. They build up a sense of self. They help that person not to feel threatened. Like, if you do this, you know what's going to happen and we're going to get you. Not shamed. I can't believe you did that. Look at you. Why would you do that? That's the worst. When people feel shame, they spiral downward. I'm a bad person, and they turn on themselves. I've seen people cut more or begin cutting after being shamed. And we provide support. That's what emotionally safe staff do. I bet everybody has somebody who's a magic staff, who you know you can give anybody to that person and that person will do well, right? What do they do? When I started realizing there were magic staff in this program that I worked in, the first thing I realized was those were the staff who did not follow my behavior plans. They did everything opposite. And at first I was mad. They're not following the plan. And then I was like, maybe my plan's not that good. And then I realized they get the emotional support piece. And they get how to be emotionally safe. And they are really connecting with people. And that's everything. And I learned. And I learned about building up a sense of self. So there was a PTSD study done in Iraq, and they showed that the people who went through horrible things but did not develop PTSD all had a lot of friends and family that they were Skyping with. So right now, it's really important for us to keep that technology going, right? To keep connecting with people. Because relationships were what protected people from developing PTSD. Also, how close they felt to the people in their unit was really critical. These connections, these relationships are everything. And they inoculate you against trauma as well as help you heal. We all know this, right? How many of you have healed from things through having a close friend or a significant other who really gets you or supports you? Or like my husband, doesn't get you, but still is loving and wonderful and supports you. He's a great guy, but I am a mystery to him, and he is a mystery to me in some ways. Men and women. I only wish I had written that book, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, because then I would be rich. It's the story of my life. But just supports you, right? And this is how we heal in relationships. And then this critical question of who am I is really important in helping people heal, especially all of you. The ages that you're working with are ages of identity development. So during adolescence, and Gail Sheehy says, brilliant psychologist, she says adolescence lasts till 30 in the new world that we're living in. You know, in the 20th and 21st century, people take a lot longer to get out of those teenage years. And that's the time during which your identity needs to develop. So many folks during the teenage years is when we're all figuring out who we are, and we kind of set up our life based on our sense of identity. Who am I? And folks with disabilities during that time are often finding out what they're not. I'm not going to college. I'm not going to get that good paying job. I'm not going to have a family. People are telling them this in some cases. So when it's critical in development to figure out who you are, they're actually hitting brick wall after brick wall, finding out who they're not. How devastating, right? And this is the time exactly with all of you. It's so important, the work you're doing. You're at that critical juncture with people where you can develop a sense of self. Because when people can really form that positive identity, I am good at something. I am somebody. I'm important in my world. These are my preferences. These are my friends. This is where I make a difference. You know, I'm good at art. I'm good with animals. Whatever it is, when we can build that positive sense of self, people really heal and move forward. How many of you know somebody with a disability who had all kinds of behaviors until they got some kind of a job? And then, well, now I'm important, now I'm needed. Or they got a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Ooh, I got to be together for him or her, right? I got myself together, as a matter of fact. Long story. Here we go. Nelson Mandela and Daisaku Ikeda. So Nelson Mandela was in prison for 27 years and had all kinds of trauma, but he had a very strong sense of self. And I believe one of the most important pieces of healing is having a sense of who you are. And when we work with people with disabilities, we can help with that. We can tell them positive things about themselves. We give that positive regard and we give positive messages. You're a good person. Wow, you're really good at art. Wow, you're really good at music. Wow, you're nice to your friends. You care about people. Positive messages help them to develop a positive sense of self. And if you look at that magic staff, they're giving positive messages and they're listening and supporting. And there's Daisaku Ikeda, a great Buddhist scholar who's written 150 books. And he says, honorary president of SGI. And he says, I love this quote, ultimately, happiness rests on how you establish a solid sense of self or being. You know, happy people don't put holes in the wall. Happy people aren't being triggered all the time. Happiness rests on that. And that's something we can facilitate, especially at the crucial juncture in those adolescent years where you are working and supporting people. So I have some tools for you. And I have on the first slide, I have a website, Karen, K-A-R-Y-N, Harvey, HARVEY.org. And maybe I can put that in the chat, but, and here's a bunch of workbooks, and you can also use the happiness assessment to help. Everybody's happiness is different, help them figure out what makes them happy. I have a book about coping with COVID that helps people build up getting through this mess. My goodbye book for anyone that's lost someone, that helps them to really work through their grief and also strengthen their sense of self. My book to celebrate me, strengthening the self. And anyone can do these books with folks, and they're very, very helpful. And then they can share their books in groups. My book of hope. My friend who's a psychologist asked me to write one about hope. She said, will you write one about for people to confirm what they believe in and help them to believe in themselves? So, and all of these are free. You can download them from my website, Karen, K-A-R-Y-N, Harvey.org. So that is my talk for today. And my last slide, healing happens. Yes, happens.
Right on time. Look at that.
With no questions. Sorry about that. Well, we'll have questions next Thursday, or this Thursday. We'll have more time.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Unless you want to cover them, I don't know. I mean, we still people are leaving, and they must have something they had to do. So, whichever you prefer.
And cover them. You mean in emails, or take a few minutes now? I'm happy to do whatever works for people.
I think everyone's leaving, so maybe we can
just. I'm gonna leave too now.
Okay.
But yeah, I can answer anything on email, and then, although I see 97 chats, that's a lot.
That's a lot. I
by Thursday.
I made copies of the questions. There's not that many. It was mostly just people being friendly. But yeah, I mean, thank you so much. I know I learned a lot, and I'm excited for Thursday. And so it's the same link to everybody, same link to get in, for the Zoom link to get in. And we are recording this. We will post it, both of them, on our website, I would guess Friday, sometimes even Thursday. We usually gets up there pretty fast. We'll put that in, as well as the PowerPoints. I will get your questions to Dr. Harvey, and she can answer them through email, or if she wants to try to cover them at the beginning of the next session, that'd be great too. So, hey, thank you guys, everybody, so much for joining us, and thank you, Dr. Harvey, for your great presentation. I know I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure everyone else did too, and learned a lot.
Oh, I'm glad. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, I'm gonna.
So we'll see everybody again at 1 o'clock on Thursday. Thank you so much.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Sources of trauma with folks with disabilities. So I'm going to recap in terms of 2 points I want to recap, and then we'll go. And my goal is to end a little earlier. I did answer questions from last week on email, and my goal is to go cut a little shorter so we can have more time for questions today. So I will try to do that. But really important, and we had said that before, but I think if you think about the people that you work with and you think about their history, and we don't always know the extent of their trauma. We don't always know the backstory. In fact, I believe we more times than not do not know it. But the reality is that we can see the signs of trauma, right? We can see, and today we're going to go through the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder that you will recognize people you work with. You will see that pattern. And then, you know, we can look at what's most important, which is what do they need for healing? What is needed for healing? So basically, let me ask you this. How many of you have a staff person you know who you can just, I think I had said something about this last time, magic staff, right? You can give anybody to that person and that person will chill out. No matter how difficult they're being, no matter what's going on, after a week or two, they calm down because they're with Joe. Or they calm down because they're with Mary. Do you all know somebody like that? Right? What do they do? So I believe that, and I think I told you last time, they never followed my behavior plans. That was number one. But number two, what do? They are able to convey that they like that person and that they are safe. I'm someone you can trust and I'm someone who cares about you. More often than not, they're listeners and they listen. I've heard people say the magic words when somebody's really escalating and starting to have an issue. What's really bothering you? Tell me what's really wrong. Rather than, what are you doing right now? Why come back here and do, you know, jumping into the power struggle, but instead going to the emotion. Are you okay? What's going on? This isn't you. And shh, people calm down. To go to the emotion underneath the behavior and saying, can I be here for you? You look like something's bothering you. And I've seen people do it with people that don't even use words, but just like, are you okay? Come with me. Let's go for a walk. So being safe. Again, being connected. We talked about this before. Those connections are so critical. And then being empowered. Letting people have a sense that they do have real choices and they have control over their life. And reiterating one more time about emotionally safe staff. They convey a positive sense of regard. They build, oh, I have a typo. They build a sense of self. You know, you are somebody important. This is who you are and I believe in you. They don't threaten. They don't make them feel ashamed, and they provide support. And, you know, I found this time and time again. So I wanted to reiterate that. And the fact that relationships heal. This young woman, wonderful woman, had a lot of issues, was in a residential agency where she, you know, it was basically an institution where she was restrained all the time. And she's allowing me to tell her story. So when she first came to our agency, she was 21, just aged out of that other agency. And she was ready to rumble, if you know what I'm talking about. So she would get into it. I am not going to bed. I am not doing this. And the staff would say, no, you have to. And they would start to get into it, where we tried to get the staff to, you know, just back off. But she would find a way to engage, and then she'd say, let's take it to the mat, bees, because that's what she called them. And everyone looked at her and was like, no, take it to the mat. Well, it turned out in that institutional setting, they had mats where they would restrain you. And to hear her tell it later on, she said, well, that was the one way that you could get staff to really talk to you, because after they did that, then they would have to sit with you. And so that was what she was used to doing. Let me start a power struggle so you restrain me and then you'll sit with me. So it took about a year to a year and a half to get her to realize that we weren't going to restrain her. And then to train the staff to not get into it when she tried to push those buttons, but to say, no, sweetheart, we're going to talk to you. We want to know what's bothering you. And if you want to make a choice to do something, do it. But here's how it's going to roll for you. You still have to get up in the morning, and go to work or, to the day program. But you can stay up. So we really changed things, giving her more power over her life, trying really hard to solidify her connections with staff and build those relationships, and, helping her to feel safe. Like, we care about you. We're not going to put our hands on you. We're not going to do it unless you're running into the road or doing something where you're going to hurt yourself. Other than that, we're not doing this. And over time, she really came around to understand that we really were committed to her and we really were going to listen to her. And then this wonderful guy at her program fell in love. He fell in love, and he fell hard. I mean, I have to say, she kind of plays him like a fiddle, but that's okay. And they have the most beautiful relationship. There they are on a cruise. We did a cruise a couple times a year with my singles program. I Believe in Love. And on those cruises, they were the it couple, and they're still seeing each other. So, and that relationship, I think that was the last piece to her healing. Not the last, because of course she still has her moments and she would like to work and she's not working. There's a lot of things that aren't perfect, that's for sure. But she's not constantly in these power struggles. She's not getting restraint. She's not looking to be restrained, and she's trusting. And it took a long time. It took a long time, as it does. And then those relationships are so important. So my big concern with COVID, right, is the isolation. So people are isolated from each other. It's difficult, and they need those relationships. So I feel like it's really critical for us, in whatever capacity, if we're serving people physically, if we're serving them virtually, whatever we're doing, to help them connect with each other. Because those friendships and relationships between each other and those peer relationships are really critical for getting through this and for fighting that isolation. And what happens is, when people are isolated, they will often re-experience their trauma, and it will come up again and again. So in the Iraq PTSD study, I think I may have mentioned how they looked at people where, they had the same trauma, but the ones who, and exact same, like both of them had been through the same trauma, and some came back and just couldn't work, couldn't function at all, whereas others came back and they were able to work and resume their relationships. Big differences. And they found the most important thing was not any other aspect of their life except for their relationships. So the people that had lots of friends and family, that was like a protection against trauma, those relationships. And then the ones that had good relationships amongst each other, they were really protected by feeling that unity, right? So right now with COVID, we've broken these relationships up. Not on purpose. And some places are getting back and having it, but these relationships are so critical, right? And I don't know if you have full attendance in many of your places where you do have people back. It's so wonderful, but then again, you have a giant risk and you have to be careful. But in many places where I speak and talk, people are actually pretty isolated. And that's really difficult. So we want to just make sure that we're helping people to connect with each other and fostering relationships as much as possible. And that really helps. There was an interesting study, the Harvard Men's Study, where they looked at men for many, many years, long-term studies. They followed them for 75 years. Now it's probably 77 years this study has been going on. And they looked at men who were from the Boston area in Harvard and very, very well off. You know, they went to Harvard. And then they looked at men in the Boston area who were from the poorest area. And they started 77 years ago and followed them all the way through. And they were constantly surveying and assessing them, saying, how happy are you with your life? How fulfilled you are? How is everything for you? Right? The ones who actually reported being the happiest were not the ones with the most money. In fact, some of the most unhappy people were the ones with the most money. They were not the people who had the highest positions. They were not always the ones with the best education. Many of the people who had the most fulfilling lives and reported being happiest and enjoying their life and waking up in the morning and looking forward to the day were some of the people with the lowest positions, some of the people with the least money. Because the one factor that correlated with happiness was relationships. And people that either had a really good, solid marriage or had a very tight circle of friends, even if they were single, and reported that they felt very bonded and close and connected, were the ones who were the happiest. And here's a little tidbit. The ones who had a bad marriage or reported staying in a marriage that they didn't like were the most unhappy. So if you're on the fence, cut them off. Just saying. But that relationships are the key. So now let's think about folks with disabilities, even at the ages that you guys are supporting them. You know, oh my goodness, how isolated they are, how difficult things are, how hard it is to have a relationship. And then, you know, in the adult world, as they move on, they get more isolated, not less isolated. And my experience has been just those who can really fight for themselves and really advocate for themselves are the ones who have relationships. And yet we know relationships are the key to satisfaction with your life, your circle of friends, and your significant other. So I think our task at hand is to help people develop those skills to have a relationship, to be able to reach out to people, to be able to talk to people, to be able to connect with people. And those skills as well as the opportunities. That's why I ran the singles group for a long time, for many years. I believe in love and sex, but let me say safe sex for adults. But why not, right? And to be isolated is to allow your trauma to continue to grow and fester. To be in relationships, to have support is healing. And research shows that over and over again. So, importance of therapeutic supports as well. So I always talk about the importance of therapy for people with disabilities. And everywhere I go, people tell me, you know, we can't get therapists to work with our folks. And the therapists say, well, we're not trained. I know some of you are clinicians. Thank you. Thank you so much. Because, you know, if you're trained in working with human beings, then you're trained. Thank you. There's a guy named Brian Talent, and he runs a clinic out of Colorado just with people with disabilities for children and adults. And he is brilliant. And they do all kinds of stuff, and they do expressive therapies. They do things very differently. They do trauma-focused CBT, that's cognitive behavioral intervention with the trauma focus, but he involves games and he involves different things. And what he says, I love. He said, working with people with disabilities as a therapist or a clinician is not a different type of therapy. It's a cultural competency. right? So if you think about it that way, like, okay, let's say somebody from Cameroon came to me in my private practice and said, you know, I want to see you. I'm not going to say, I'm sorry, I'm not trained in working with Cameroonians. This isn't just going to happen. No, right? I'm going to say, wow, great. And let me learn about Cameroon. I know there's unrest right now. I know there's an issue between the English side and the French side. Where are you and how is this affecting you, right? And I'll educate myself. This is what we call cultural competency. So we can educate the therapists. We can educate people. And I believe group is so important. I've done a lot of groups through the years, and it seems to be actually the most effective type of therapy for me. I believe grief work is also important. We have a lot of folks grieving right now, and it's really heartbreaking. So I have found when we at the Arc of Baltimore, we started a program for people where we knew they had a lot of trauma. And we started that program, and we worked very hard to bring people in, and we would work with them from September to June. We did EMDR type of trauma therapy, eye movement, desensitization, reprocessing, but we did mainly group work. So we had group therapy, we had a drum circle, we had music and singing, we had art therapy too, and expressive therapies, mainly art. And I shouldn't say art therapy because we weren't certified art therapists, so we did creative art work as therapeutic tool. But we found that the more people were expressive, the more they were singing or drumming or dancing or doing art, the more they could express themselves, because just words were not enough, right? And it was beautiful. But interestingly enough, we found that when we got to doing the trauma work, and we really focused a lot on the trauma work, that grief and loss were the core of people's trauma. Even when we knew that they had had other traumas, they went to who they had lost. And sometimes it was someone they had lost 30 years ago or 20 years ago, but they were continuing to grieve. You know, in trauma, the past is the present, right? And they're just in that cycle of grief. So this woman came to us, and we actually flagged her because we knew she had witnessed her stepfather stab and kill her mother when she was 13, right? That's so horrible. And we knew she had been through this. And then after that, she had been put in a group home. But unbeknownst to us, there was a woman in the group home who she formed a very deep and beautiful relationship with, who became like her significant other. And they were together for many years. And then something really bad happened. This is bad, just prepare you, sorry. So they were having dinner, and this woman really helped her heal. They were having dinner, and she wouldn't eat. The woman's name is Mary. Mary wouldn't eat. And Elena said, Mary, you have to eat. You have to eat. If you don't eat, you're going to get sick. You have to eat. And so then Mary stuffed food in her mouth saying, I'm eating. And she choked and died. So we didn't know why Elena was so heavy. Elena always looked so discouraged and upset. She always looked horrible, like, oh. And it turned out, you know, Elena blamed herself for the death of the woman she loved, right? And the person who had helped her heal. And so she opened up to us about that. Finally, she had never told anyone. She opened up to the group. The group therapy was such a critical part. It was actually the most healing. And the group comforted her. The group helped her. And finally, even though we had said, oh, that wasn't your fault, blah, 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 she still, every time we had music, she would say, I'm not playing the drum. And every time we started doing the singing, I don't sing. Because she was still full of self-hate and shame. But the group broke through with her. And when she opened up to the group about this, everybody, it was amazing. Everybody got up and walked over, and one by one, they hugged her and told her that they loved her and that it wasn't her fault. It's a group of 8 people, all with disabilities. Even the person, we had somebody in the group who really had a lot of difficulty using words. Even he was able to communicate. And it was so beautiful. And then we do this grief work. And I have something that I'm going to share a little later called the Goodbye Book. And it's a concrete way for doing grief therapy where people can process their grief really concretely and, you know, do a little book to honor who they've lost, and also affirm their own identity. Remember, we talked about positive identity last time, and just affirm, like, I am valuable. Even though I lost someone who valued me, I didn't lose my value. So we did the Goodbye Book, and then we did what we decorate these little boxes. We call them memory boxes in the favorite colors of the person they lost. And we put a message to the person, they put a message to the person inside the box, and take that home and have that box on their night table and sleep next to it. And then we filmed everybody talking about their box. And hopefully this will work. Here's Elena.
Yes. I made this for my roommate, my mister, and I love her. Oh, good job, Mike. And I also could have matched it. Okay. Dear roommate, I miss you and I love you. Good job,
After that, she changed so much. She dumped that burden that she'd been carrying, that heavy, heavy burden, and was even able to start working part-time. But, you know, before she wouldn't do anything, and she was very angry, very shut down. We never saw her smile. So I really believe strongly in the importance of therapy, the importance of group work, and the importance of grief therapy and grief counseling. It really makes a giant difference. So many times people are blaming themselves and we don't even know it. We don't know what we don't know, and we might see a behavior but not understand the depth of the emotion and the trauma that's behind that behavior. You know, so often people aren't being manipulative. They're not just trying to get something they want. They're expressing their pain. So we also did a study on EMDR, and we had, we had 8 people who we all know had severe trauma. And we had, it was a student who was working on her dissertation and had a lot of money, and she was able to fund this study that she wanted to do for her dissertation. And she did a year of EMDR with people. We had this one woman who was always crying and upset and just distraught all the time. And she was abandoned as a child and had a lot of trauma. She got hit by a car 3 times because she was always running out into the road and no one would get her. Oh, it was a mess. Someone would say something that hurt her feelings, and boom, she'd be out there. She'd be walking home because she was done with everyone and crying, crying, crying. So she had EMDR. After 1 year, she changed so much. No more crying, never again to run into the road, never got hit by a car. She's she just retired. She got a new job, and then she just recently retired because she's now gotten the EMDR for 7 years. And she's a different person. She told everybody, I'm done working. She's older. So, and now with our younger people, we have this one person who was extremely abused. Here's another older one. Sorry, I'm talking about some of the older people. I'll get to the younger ones. And she would always make horrible accusations. And I believe that she would say she was raped. I believe that she really had flashbacks because she was horribly sexually abused as a child. And then also in her early adult years. And she would accuse, and one time she accused the van driver of raping her, and there was no evidence of it, but the police believed her over us. We said, you know, she has trauma and she has a history of doing this, and they still locked the staff up. That was terrible. We had to bail them out. I felt so bad. But since her year of EMDR, she used to also, she would have hair just in front of her face, and she used to walk around kind of scowling at people and never want to talk to anyone. Since that, she cut her hair, dyed it bright red. She goes to all the singles events. She's a whole nother person. That EMDR healed her so much. And then the person doing the EMDR offered to keep going for free with people. She did it pro bono for several people. And this woman said, no, I'm good. And then she also got early retirement. Everybody took their life over. I'm done working. You know, 2 more cases. This one young man, severely abused as a child and in severe poverty. And he was very young and came to us, but he lost his job. We had a job on a crew, but he kept fighting with people. So he was about to be fired. They actually suspended him. And then he did the EMDR for 1 year. He's gone 5 years. Actually, now it's 7 years. Actually, 7 years with no aggression. And does well. One more guy, paralyzed by the death of his mother, just shut down, wouldn't work, wouldn't go anywhere, wouldn't talk to anyone. After that EMDR, he continued with it he did it for about 4 years. He revealed this incredible talent for wood carving. And we all have little figures that he's carved for us. Amazing, like he would never do anything, but he had this talent. And he started carving and he started doing things, and you know, he's just blossomed. So I've tried to get the principal investigator, the woman who did her dissertation since graduated, to write this up. But she says that she has trauma from her dissertation. So hopefully we will get this published. So I'm too traumatized to look at the data. Well, I'm going to write it. But I've been talking about it because I think it's really important. That therapy is everything. So these critical stages of development are so important. And as we talked about earlier, you know, that identity piece is everything. And you're getting people at this crucial moment. And they've had, look at the past. This is Erik Erikson's stages of development. And now if we look at the lives of people with disabilities, there's the trust versus mistrust. There's the autonomy versus shame. There's initiative versus guilt. All these experiences they have of not doing as well as other people, right? All these experiences have been so difficult for them. And here they are. So as we talked about, what matters most is that sense of self. Because this stage where you have people, they're forming that sense of self. And what matters most is how you see yourself. So I'm going to, because I want to have more time, I'm going to flip over to something. Excuse me for 1 minute while I pull up, because I want to jump to, so we have time for questions. I want to jump to the stages that I want to cover on of trauma, because, and I want to talk about more specifically. I'm going to share now. Can you see my screen? Okay, good. So I want to talk about what's going on now. And I'm excuse me, but I wanted to share about that therapy, but I also want to go to, let's talk about what's going on now. And a lot of people have also been triggered by the murders, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd. And so we're talking about trauma, we're talking about what people have been through, but we also have to look at what they're going through in terms of anybody that's experienced racism, which is a giant trauma. And that folks are actually, I see right now, a lot of people are feeling paranoid. They're feeling like they can't trust anyone. And this is a giant issue for us to be addressing. because many people have been triggered by the previous events, as well as they're going through so much with COVID. And with the COVID piece, what we need to be talking about is the fact that it's so difficult to deal with. So they've seen this racism, they've been triggered by things going on if they've been the victim of abuse in any way. Also, they've seen discrimination, right? Folks have seen discrimination against immigrants. Many people have experienced that directly. And now they've been triggered again, and they were triggered before. Things in the news, things happening, and things happening around them. And we add COVID to it. So we're looking at, past and treatments that are needed. And now let's look at what's going on now. What's going on now? People are not able to predict what's going to happen. People are isolated. People are immobile. They've lost a sense of safety and they've lost a sense of purpose. So according to Bessel van der Kolk, what's going on now is actually impacting previous trauma as well. So we're looking at previous losses, we're looking at previous trauma. Now we're looking at why is it so urgent that people get that emotional support? Because now we're impacting things even further with what's going on with COVID. So it's a double whammy. It's a double whammy. And that's why I feel it's so important for us to get those therapeutic supports and for us to get those connections for people. So I wanted to get to, because I really do want to do the questions and answers, the 4 symptom areas of post-traumatic stress disorder. And how many of you know somebody that's constantly talking about someone who died? Right? My mother died, my father died, my grandma died, my grandma died. Have you seen that? That's because they're in a loop where they're re-experiencing trauma. How many of you work with somebody who has nightmares? How many of you have seen someone have a glassy-eyed look and just start responding? This is symptom area number 1, re-experiencing. So if you are working with someone and all of a sudden they get a glassy-eyed look and they're just responding in ways that make no sense, maybe they're throwing things or screaming, a lot of times they're somewhere else. They're re-experiencing some horrible trauma they've had. Flashbacks are real, and people have them. And I bet you've seen them. So again, this is one symptom area of trauma. Next, avoidance, blunted emotions, people shut down, people being hypervigilant, trying to make their life. I've seen this with a lot of people with autism. They'll get obsessed with one thing and just do it over and over again because that makes them feel safe. How many of you work with someone that gets completely obsessed? Because that's the one thing they can control, because they're feeling out of control. And I'm seeing a lot of that with COVID right now. Negative alteration in cognition and mood. A lot of people have this sense of impending doom. Like they don't know what's going on. Everything's going to be horrible. What's going to happen next? And no hope. And then arousal. This is where our behavioral issues come in. This is the last symptom area, according to the DSM, where people get very agitated because our amygdalas are firing. They're filling us up with chemicals when we think we're not safe. And people who are really filled up with chemicals get very, very agitated. Oh my gosh, somebody's dying. Oh my God, my mother's brother died, or my uncle died, my grandpa died. And just these terrifying events of COVID are really triggering people. So we see people having more property destruction. I'm working with somebody who's broken 3 computers so far. We see people doing reckless things, self-destructive things, and not even knowing why, because their brain isn't clear, because they're filled up with chemicals, because the amygdala has filled their brain up with chemicals telling them they're not safe. like we talked about, right, Tuesday. That's why that safety is so important. So they can be in a hyper aroused state or hyper vigilant, like wanting everything to be a certain way and okay, or they can be completely disconnected. And we see this as well. Again, I keep showing you this triangle: safety, connection, empowerment. This is getting ridiculous, right? I'm sorry, I keep showing it to you. I'm a little obsessed. I have my own issues. But again, if we can help people to feel safe, it changes everything. And now what I want to talk about real briefly, so we have time to talk, is that in the time of COVID, we have got to focus on resilience, right? Because there's things we can get out of this. There's lessons we can learn, and they're very important. One is optimism. We can help people to see things differently. I recommend that we, in programs, we sit down the same time every day. Maybe you can do it at lunchtime or whatever. And everybody has to say 3 things they appreciate. Because if you can get the brain to start thinking positively and come up with things they appreciate, you can get into a positive cycle. Second is engagement. I think it's really important if we can get people engaged, and it's so wonderful where there are activities going on, and the work you guys do of engaging people is so fantastic, because that is what is needed. More important than anything. And then finally, creativity. How can we do a workaround? And you're the champions of that, right? And in addition, we have to understand that families have trauma. And when you work with somebody, you're working with their family. You know, I'm so excited that Amy Day is presenting. And I think she's so wonderful as a family member and as a professional, and that you'll get so much from her presentation. And when the child is going through trauma, the family is traumatized. And then when the family is traumatized and the family has their generational trauma, maybe that family has been discriminated against, maybe these incidents of racism they've experienced directly, who knows? Then the child is affected. It's all intertwined. Right? And transition, the times that you're working with people are very high trauma, right? They're high stress. They're high stress. Doesn't have to be trauma, but when you're stressed is when those past traumas come out. And sometimes we can see families become very controlling, right? Like to the point where I have said some things I shouldn't have said about certain family members, until I finally got it. Like, wait a minute, this is a traumatized system. And they need support as well. So we can give therapy and support to the individuals, and we can understand that family trauma and take a step back and say, how can I support you? I think these things are all critical. Supporting staff. Hey, right? Staff have trauma. Beyond. So last year I was asked to go to El Paso after the shooting, and I just saw the trauma of discrimination and violence, and so many people were so traumatized, and it broke my heart. And then they're still expected to work with folks and do all this stuff when they've just been shattered. And this is so many of us, right? And some of you have lost people. I'm so, so sorry. And I'm so sorry for what we're all going through. So we have our own burdens, and we have to take care of ourselves. And to find a way to do self-care is so critical. For mid-managers, we have to figure out how to give staff a sense of safety and support. Like, you're safe here, you're not going to be fired for the smallest thing. And I want to know how you're doing, how you're feeling, and how I can support you. And then staff supporting each other, right, makes such a difference, because this is a tough time. It's my appreciation circle, where I think it's a wonderful thing to do in any program. Just stop every day and say, okay, we're going to all say 3 things we appreciate. And you'll see the effects of this. You know, bringing people into the here and now, helping them to heal. The most important thing is that we understand that nobody's at their best, myself included. I can't believe I screwed up the time. I'm so sorry. But really, nobody's at their best right now. Everybody's struggling. And if we can be gentle with each other, I think it's so helpful. And more importantly, to be gentle with ourselves. Work with yourself. Give yourself the hope that you need and deserve. And you'll find that, as you do more and more for yourself and to take care of yourself, right? Then you're able to give more to others. But you've got to also take care of you. So here are some kind of follow-up tips and, just my thoughts on how we need to help each other through this, and my message about therapy and the importance of therapeutic supports as my part 2. So I was determined that we would have more time for interaction. So I am now going to stop sharing and open it up. I used to teach a class, graduate school, psychology on trauma, and my students would say, wow, once you put your trauma glasses on, you understand things so differently and you see it everywhere. And it explains a lot. That's why I really emphasize the therapy, because I just think that's so critical, because we can't be everything. Staff can't be therapists and, do it all, but your relationship can be therapeutic, even though you're not the therapist. And then we get the support from all the places we need it, and I think it's a civil rights issue to say everybody deserves access to mental health treatment. This is a civil rights issue. It really is, as far as I'm concerned. Thanks.
Another, I know that you touched on it in the beginning, the first day, but you have a lot of resources on your page too that everyone can use to kind of support this as well. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, and then for everybody, I put up the satisfaction survey. So if you want to fill that out, that's something that really helps us be able to continue to provide these and provide what you find useful. So please fill that out. And I know that Vanessa will send that to you as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Because, I was so concerned, since I talked so much last time and I didn't get to have the questions. I really wanted the interaction time. So I have a number of workbooks on my website, KarenHarvey.org. I have a Coping with COVID workbook where you can sit down with folks and they can write if they write. Otherwise, you can write for them. Actually, I have worked with homeless mentally ill, and that is heartbreaking. I did that before I went into the disability field. But you can do these workbooks with folks. Also, my book of hope, where people can affirm what they believe in. The Goodbye book, where we process loss. So all of those are on the website, in addition to a number of other materials that are all free. And you don't have to be a therapist to use them. You can use them any way you want. Please just, if you find something and it benefits you, please use it, please share it. I'm just trying to get stuff out there for everybody. Thank you, Eric, Dr. Eric. Thank you so much.
Dr. Eric, you're welcome. A lot of students just call me Mr. Dr. Eric.
Love it. It's great.
I like the new resiliency piece. I hadn't seen that one before. So I think that's going to take the place of the triangle now. And that's going to be the thing that I'm going to be working on next for him, especially during COVID. It's been very hard to see the positives, but there are definitely positives. It definitely helps him to become more strong with using a computer, and typing, so many things. And so, yeah, that's something we definitely have to work on, and helping him see the positives and what's going on right now.
This is so true. Thank you again for the work, the very important, crucial work that you're doing. You're really saving lives in ways you don't even realize, just changing lives and being there for people at the really crucial moment in their lives when they really need somebody. So
Do you
thank
come back for another event?
if they want me to. I don't know. After showing up late and getting confused with the time and getting confused about our earlier meeting, I might be off the list.
You gave us some trauma.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did that. And I was thinking earlier, okay,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
time is it? Is it?
Well, I mean, we have the presentation proposal up for Texas Transition Conference. I'm sure that someone that's on this right now would probably accept it.
I'll send you the link, Karen. You can submit a proposal for TTC again.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, well, I don't know. I just, I sometimes I get confused with COVID. I have just not been my best self. I did a presentation this morning, and then, your brain is gone, and then you have to pull your brain back together, and it's just not the same, is it, you guys, with Zoom? It's just not the same. I'm like, if I got up on a plane and I showed up somewhere, that was a lot of work, but it was easier. So this is just such a strange alternate universe. But the great thing is that we can touch more people. So that's the one wonderful thing, and do it cheaply.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And so Vanessa put her email on there. If you need a certificate of attendance, send that to her and give her a lot to do.
Great. Thank you,
Yeah.
Vanessa. Thank you so much for everything. And Dr. Eric, thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
You
Thank
guys are
you.
wonderful.
Yeah. We're
Yeah.
feel really grateful to get to put this on.
Yes, yes.
I'm so
We appreciate the attendance.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of the afternoon.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.